Hey YouTube, this is SlayerBRK here, and I'm going to be doing a build for Miller. We're doing a really simple build here. It's just going to be a simple i5 4690, very basic H97 motherboard, no overclocking, so real basic air cooler. Where it gets a little interesting is we're going to be throwing a 980 Ti in there and 32 gigabytes of RAM, as well as a very good workhorse gold rated PSU. So hopefully this build comes out pretty decent, and we'll be back in a minute.
Peace.
And via the magic of the internet, we are back. I have unboxed pretty much everything we need. It's sitting in front of us. We are now ready to do an out-of-case build. This portion of the build will be done out, as it sounds, outside of the case. I usually use the motherboard box. The main goal here is to make sure all the parts are actually working before going through the process of putting them all in the case, doing your cable management and all that stuff, which is just a huge hassle if you're not actually getting anything out of it. In this, I do have to do two pre-warnings. One, you should be wearing an electrostatic discharge band, an ESD wristband as they're called. There, make sure that you don't do any static discharge your motherboard or components, frying them. I, on the other hand, I have like 4. We're in the process of moving, and I don't know where any of them are. So there is a second option, and this is not one that I recommend, but you will see me doing it a lot throughout this video, and that is touching something metal to make sure that any electricity in your body is discharged into the metal rather than into the circuitry. I'm also not wearing socks so that my feet don't protect the electricity on the carpet, but that's beside the point. On top of that, I will also be, when I put the CPU in the motherboard, I'll be putting in the aftermarket cooler, and I'll be leaving that in when I move the board and everything. Most people would recommend that you use the cooler that comes with it, and then you remove the cooler and you clean off the paste with isopropyl alcohol or some other cleaning solution. And I don't really see a reason to do that when I plan to put this one on and leave it on. I'm going to test that it works, and if it works, I'm going to leave it on, and I'm not going to go through the hassle of repasting and all that stuff. This isn't a overclock, so this isn't anything I'm doing an overclock in, so I'm not worried about getting those extra few degrees or anything like that that you get from expensive pastes or perfect paste of applications. So with no further ado, let's get started. Okay. Actually, let's put our CPU in first. So the first thing we'll do is we will lift our bar over our CPU bar cover. I can't talk today, I'm sorry, I have a cold and it's probably pretty evident. It's also like 1,000 degrees in this room, so I'm sweating my butt off. When you're putting these in, there's a couple different ways to go. The main thing you want to do is there is a little arrow on here. You want to make sure that matches up with your CPU, and there's usually a dot or some kind of marks on the CPU, but of course, or the motherboard, but of course this board does not have them. So there's a couple different ways to tell how it goes in, and with this one, there's little indents on the top where it makes a connection, and you just want to match those indentations right in. Now you can just put that right in, and the plastic will pop right out with a very small amount of pressure. And you just want to latch your arm down, and your CPU has been installed. We'll set it aside for now. Once the CPU has been installed, it's pretty easy to just install your cooler. Open the cooler up out of the packaging it was in. This is the back bracket cooler, which this is the actual reason that most people don't recommend you install these coolers, because they need a back bracket. Actually, honestly, with that, I may even end up going back to the old one. We'll see how difficult that bracket's going to install. There's also all of your screws and bracket pieces in there and in there. Now with that, I'm actually going to install the RAM first because it's even easier, and I just feel like being lazy today. Actually, I feel like delaying the inevitable of having to figure out which one of those CPU coolers I'm going to use. Now we went with a real basic RAM stick. Just some sniper or G.Skill sniper RAM. Very, very basic stuff. Very, very normal gaming stuff. A lot of rigs have this. It's decent RAM though. Still only DDR3, but this is not a build that's DDR4 compatible. And I didn't feel like the extra cost of DDR4 compatible parts was worth it in this case. We would have had to greatly decrease the graphics card, which was kind of the whole point of this build. Okay, so when it comes to doing your motherboard, you would usually fill your this one first, and then this one, so your two colored ones first, and then these two. I will be filling all four today, so I don't really need to worry about which ones I fill and in what order. The main thing I have to worry about is making sure that the key here lines up with the key on the RAM slot. I have seen people violently shove these in the wrong way and break the RAM sticks. If anything in your computer takes extreme force, it's not being done right. Nothing should take a ton of force to put into your PC. A little force maybe, but not a ton. And as you push these down, they will click right into place without any real, well, there should be some resistance, but not a whole lot at least. And one click and two clicks. So with that, our RAM is installed, and we are ready to move on to that CPU cooler. So it does look like I'm going to probably end up installing the usual the stock cooler, which I know I said I wasn't going to do, but I really don't feel like trying to put that on the back right now. It's going to make it a huge hassle to put into the case. Actually, you know what? I can probably pull that off. See, when I did my build, I did all water cooling, and I put it's an all-in-one loop. I didn't do custom. I was way too lazy. But I did an all-in-one water cooling loop, and I put the water cooler on, and I left it on for the whole process, and it made it a huge hassle, so I'm kind of weary to do it to myself again. But at the same time, the extra effort that you... Actually, this is a front mount one. What am I talking about? This is even a back mount. This is just going to go on like that. Ha! Okay. Ignore that statement. But yeah, the extra effort I was worried was going to be taken was going to make it a horrible mess trying to get that in there. But clearly I'm delirious from being sick because this is no extra effort really at all. But let's also stick this in real quick. I'll get all the simple stuff done. Now for your GPU, sadly, they were made back in an era when they were a replacement for another type of, wasn't PCIe, but it was something, it was a kind of connector before that. I should know this, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. So with that, they actually go in upside down because they were initially made to work a little differently than they do now. So that has held over long enough that they actually still face the wrong direction, where you get the bottom as the top. So that just plugs right into there. If I don't miss the slot, which I totally missed the slot the first try. And this is taking a little more force than I'd like. So let's pull that off and see how this locking mechanism works. Nope, that lock is unlocked. It's just a little bit more resistance than I was hoping I would get. So there it goes, and it locks. and I have it locked in. Okay. Now time to figure out how this thing goes on. I haven't actually used this particular cooler before, so getting it on will take me a moment. This is my Intel bag. So I don't need this. This bag is for an AMD setup, but we are using Intel. Now I need to figure out which of the two I need. I actually set that over here, so I'll be right back on the camera and figure out where I set down that particular there it is. Always refer to your manuals when you don't know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing with something. Okay. So the main thing I was worried about were we have a socket list here, and Intel has a couple different socket styles for different CPUs, and I needed to make sure I was putting it into the right one. So the middle socket is our 1150, which is what this is. It's 1150, 1155, and 1156. And now that I know that, I don't need that one. I need this one to be put in there. Okay. So it goes in the center of the three. Now these three go in like this. Yep, right there. And right there. That one fell out. So they're all popped right in. And with that, we should be able to pull. I don't know if it's falling out. I guess I should stop trying to sit down. But I just want to make sure they're all in their place. It should pop right in like that. Just lift the motherboard slightly to let these pop through. And this does hang off the side of the motherboard a little bit, so you want to make sure that that doesn't get in the way of anything. And then you can just pop these anchors right down and inside, and that will seal off anything. That'll actually pop them open so that they can't come out. It's a very interesting little anchor system that Intel uses for these sockets. Some of them are extremely hard to deal with, which is what I was worried about a minute ago. I've actually seen some of these take people who have been doing this for years, like 5-10 minutes to figure out. And I say that that's clearly a problem. If you've been doing nothing but computer builds for 10 years and you run into random pieces that you can't actually do anything with. And then those two screws, just screw this right on. So from there, go. Don't touch your paste. I touched it a little bit, but you don't want to mess your paste up too much. Otherwise, you'll have to take the paste off and reapply. And that's the whole thing I'm trying to avoid right now myself. Like I said, it will get you a couple degrees better temperature, but not nearly enough that it would be worth, at least to me, that it would be worth actually reinstalling it. Oh, so this is an upward facing one. That's an interesting choice. Okay, I can live with that. And they expect me to remove you. Well, crap. As you can see, I just put some of my CPU paste onto the CPU. Obviously, it's where it's staying. I didn't realize that I was expected to remove the fan. You don't always have to, but like I said, they put this one on sideways or facing everything else. So you pretty much have to pull the fan off to get it on there and have it sit properly and be able to screw in. Oop. Now we grab our screw and my screwdriver. This isn't the usual screwdriver I'd be using, but I let a friend borrow my iFixit kit, and I have not got that back yet. Holy crap, that could have been bad. So again, we have to separate this. Thankfully, it's all getting put on the CPU and nowhere else. And no, this is not how you should be doing this. I will admit to that right now. I am fully aware that I shouldn't be repeatedly breaking the seal between my CPU and my CPU cooler, but that's honestly more of a problem once the CPU, once your thermal paste starts to dry. For now, it's just a inconvenience more than anything else. There it is. Let's get the other one in, and I'll screw them both down. And actually, this is the kind of stuff that you don't always think of right away. But thankfully, it's a very easy piece to remove, because that was definitely 100% in the way. Okay, we'll be right back. We have momentary technical difficulties. The screwdriver is not nearly large enough to screw the screws in, so give me a couple minutes, actually milliseconds to you guys, but let's... And we're back. I found a screwdriver, one that isn't this little teeny dinky little thing. I was hoping that would get the job done, but clearly I was mistaken. This is actually the one out of the exact kit that I lent to my friend. He ran over here and gave me just the screwdriver back, because apparently I don't need an electrostatic discharge wristband. He needs it more than I do, although he probably does. He actually is very clumsy, and I don't want him to break his device, so I don't have any complaints on my end. Let me just make sure these get all the way tightened in, and we can move on to the next step. Usually, you don't want to make too much pressure on the motherboard, but with a mounting system like this, you're not likely to create a whole ton of pressure on the board from this, but that is stable, and that's all that really matters in the end. And then of course we need to put on this thing again, which is a very rubbery contraption. I don't actually know how easy it is for me to put back on. Not 100% sure what they were thinking when they came up with this concept, but people really liked this one, and I can see why. It's a real easy one to use, so I don't have a lot of complaints here yet, at least. Definitely an odd one though. And that seems to be pretty stable. Now we want to make sure that we plug this into one of the CPU fan spots, such as the one right over here. This is CPU fan 1, right here. If it wants to go in, that is. Oh, things are keyed on CPUs fairly well, or not CPUs, on motherboards fairly well, to make sure you don't put things in backwards, like I was just trying to do. Now let's get this guy put back in. It should be, again, pretty easy. Just want to make sure it's at the edge so that you don't have any issues with that little bar on the ends trying to slide too far down. And from there, just make sure it slides pretty much straight down. And this one has a little slide forward bar to lock it in place. From there, I really just need to go through the process of plugging everything in, including plugging my graphics card into the monitor. Backwards, or what's wrong? Up, yeah, backwards. So, DisplayPort on one side, and then the fun of trying to define the DisplayPort over here. I'm actually going to spin around the desk for this one because this is way too much work. The glory of devices that are adjustable like this is that it makes it extremely easy to get them all hooked up. And with that, we can start getting our stuff plugged in. This we don't need yet. This one we probably need. This one we will definitely need. I do buy my CPU or power supplies at PSUs. Sorry, completely modular. The reason I do this is it makes it a lot easier to make sure I only have the cable management that I have to have, instead of having an bunch of extra cable management that isn't really necessary or even wanted. Just a bunch of stuff in the extra stuff in the way, and this prevents that. So that'll go on that direction and just pop right down. That's your main power to the motherboard. You'll also have an extra 8-pin up top, which will be one of these. So those are your basic power. Not that one. That one. What is over here? Like I said before, never try and really force anything. That'll just end up making things worse for you. You'll end up with broken connectors or broken or worst case scenario, broken motherboards. Okay, that one is in. Just wanted to make sure it was in all the way. And then we'll need 2 of those running to our graphics card. These are all different lengths. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. These will be all unplugged and rewired, and when I go to put it in the system, I'll use them. I'll rewire everything and pick ones that are correct length to make sure that we have as little cable lying around as possible. For now, the idea here is just to make sure everything's actually fully functional. So this is purely a functionality test and nothing more. Now, if during this we do find that there is something that doesn't boot correctly or isn't recognized like it should be, and we aren't able to get a good post or reading an error code, that's when we have to go through the whole fun of diagnosing and removing parts and trying to figure out what could possibly be causing it. Not something I really want to do today, so something I'm really hoping does not happen. Boom. With that, we have everything plugged in. Now, there is a panel down here that you plug your stuff in to actually be able to use your buttons on the computer. You can actually take a screwdriver and short two of those pins by connecting them to boot it up. With this one, let's see. Should be these two. That's usually a bad sign. But I could be having an issue with that power supply. I haven't tested that power supply. Let's see. This is always the fun part, trying to get this to work. Well, with that, I'm going to take another quick break and do a double check of my software, make sure everything's, my hardware, make sure everything's fully functional, see if there's a reason that these aren't loading correctly and booting up, and we will be right back. Hey YouTube, I actually still haven't quite figured out what's wrong with this. I'm going to test another PSU here in a minute, but right now I'm making a trip to the ER. We just realized I have a fever of 103 and my cough's getting worse. So my wife's going to take me into the ER. I will be back and I will finish this video, but there's going to be a time jump and I might do a little work on it before I start recording again. Sorry about this mess. I put off recording for a few days and now I'm on a deadline and stuff's not really going well, so sorry. Okay, so I'm back from the hospital. I have pneumonia. They gave me some drugs, no big deal. I've clearly moved the box, the tower here, mainly because it's easier to just run the power button over and try that rather than shorting out the motherboard to make it start. And I realized the problem was earlier in the video when I was a little delirious and sweating profusely and all that jazz, I had run a, let's see if I have it a little bit here, I'd run a VGA style power adapter like this over to the CPU power rather than a CPU power adapter like this. With that, I didn't get anything from the power, but now that I've done the correction, everything starts up over here, everything starts up over here, and I have a full boot. All my components work, my graphics card works, my RAM sticks work, or all Miller's device stuff works, power supply, or the power supply works, that fan is keeping everything cool. Now all I have left to do is to disassemble this little setup, stick everything in the case, and we should be good to go. With that, we're going to cut off for stage 2, mainly because I am still extremely sick and probably shouldn't be hands deep in someone else's computer electronics when I'm on a ton of drugs. So with that, I'm going to cut off for now. I think I'm going to probably edit this and throw it up as part 1 and then do part 2 as the internal build. So see you guys in a little bit, or next video. Also, when it's in this stage, shove it down by the button is pretty much the only option, so it's not really a big deal. Thank you for the views. If you have any questions or comments, throw them below. Yes, I know I did a ton of stuff, not really right. Like I said, I don't follow all the rules to a T, and I do not recommend building like this, although an external build outside of the tower to make sure your components work is extremely important, and for obvious reasons. With that, I'll let you guys go.